If you're thinking about making a resin table, here's a couple good tips. Try using deep pour resin instead of tabletop epoxy. You can mix up and pour all of the resin in a single step. You will have a longer time to work with it before it starts curing. Any and all air bubbles will rise to the surface on their own to be popped, and a good quality resin won't show signs of aging for decades. Before pouring the resin, there's a couple steps I take to prepare the live edge wood slabs. Once I surface the top and bottom flat, I remove all the bark from the live edges and any debris left behind. I then seal all surfaces, including the bottom, with resin. Once that cures, I rough up the live edges with a 120 grit. Next, I apply a little bit of resin to the bottom side of the slab and bond it to the pour table so it doesn't move. Using silicone and a vinyl baseboard, I created a mold. Now at that point, I could go ahead and mix up the resin and pour it in. For finishing, I surfaced it flat on top and bottom once again and then sanded it to 400 grit on all surfaces. Using a router, I give it a 1/4 inch bevel around the edges. When sanding large areas of resin, I'll routinely stop and clean off the surface before making another pass. The sanding disc will still gum up with resin, especially in higher grits, but it'll make it a lot easier. After sanding to 400 grit, I'll stop, give it an air bath with compressed air, and clean off the surface with water to raise the grain. Once that dries, I'll go ahead and resand it with 400 grit to ensure a smooth surface for the finish. To give the wood a natural matte look, I'll use an oil wax finish. On the first application, I am very generous with the oil wax and apply quite a bit to allow it to soak into the wood. Once that cures, I'll rough it up with Scotch-Brite in between each application. If I want a heavy matte finish on the resin, I'll stop at this point. A matte finish is going to be more robust and will hold up to wear and tear much better than a high gloss finish over time. If I want a medium or light matte finish, I'll wet sand it between 500 and 3000 grit depending on my liking. The higher grit I wet sand it to, it becomes clearer and more transparent, developing a higher gloss finish. Ultimately on this one, I took it to 8000 grit wet sanding and then started buffing it out with compounds. At this point, the resin is at its highest level of transparency, allowing you to easily see through to the details on the live edge. On transparent pieces, I prefer to also polish out the bottom so that you can see through it. If you don't care to see completely through it, you can leave the bottom sanded to 400 grit, leaving it with a frost finish. A high gloss finish is more work and requires long-term care, but it really brings it to life.